I spent this summer at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, working in the sleep center. The Mayo Clinic is one of the largest hospitals in the United States, and it's one of the best in the world. It's a not-for-profit medical group and research group, and they emphasize three main areas: patient care, education, and research. And the research and education can be seen through their graduate school and medical school, which are attached. But most importantly, they emphasize patient care. The most important part of the Mayo Clinic is making sure the patient feels valued and has a wonderful experience there. For my internship, I worked on 2 different projects with several other students that were there this summer. One involving the error-related negativity, which is an event-related potential, which I will explain what that is later, and one involving the cyclic alternating patterns in sleep. I also had several educational opportunities while I was at the Mayo Clinic, including medical and neurology grand rounds, which are lectures on Mondays and Fridays over lunch, where you can go and listen to lectures done by impressive people at the Mayo Clinic that they got to come in from all over the country. So that was really cool. And then we also did a journal club with all of the people in our research group every other Friday, reading articles that had to do with our projects. The CAP project had to do with cyclic alternating patterns in your sleep, which are microarousals that you have during the night. There's some debate about why we have them. Some people say that they're sleep preserving, but that's still to be discovered. And we were asking if epileptic patients have a higher frequency. So our job was to go through 8-hour-long sleep studies and look for these patterns that just kind of jump out from the EEG. And so this is an epoch, and that's 30 seconds. And so there were 8 hours chunks of these that we went through in 30-second intervals looking for these. The ERN project was the project that I was a little bit more invested in, because a lot of the research I'm looking to do in the future involves event-related potentials. And what these are they're electrical potentials in the brain that fire in response to stimuli or your responses in a research paradigm. And it provides information about the timing of the events that go on in the brain while you're doing a task. It doesn't tell you where in the brain they're occurring, but it gives you a lot of spatial, temporal information. They're extracted from EEGs by averaging. So these are different brainwaves from individual trials that are averaged to get a smoother waveform. So each patient goes through hundreds of trials at a time, so they can be a bit tiresome. But the ERN is what happens when your brain detects that you've made an error. So if you're going through the paradigm, we had response, so you hit one button if an X was presented and one button if an O was presented, and your brain would fire more if you made a mistake. So this higher line is when you have an incorrect response, and the lower line is a correct response, and the ERN is the difference wave, which you can see in the middle in red. My role, unfortunately, because we were only summer students, we weren't allowed to work with any of the patients, so we were only able to work with the data, but that was invaluable in itself because I learned how to analyze the CRP data, and so I worked with all of the control data that had been collected before I got there. We also practiced running the procedure on each other, so this is a picture of me going through it. That was really valuable too, so even though we weren't allowed to work with the patients, we ran each other through the paradigm multiple times and practiced putting on the cap and just getting everybody ready for it. Intellectually, I learned how to do ERP research, which is integral in the career path that I want to take. And I also learned how to analyze it, so I learned how to run the paradigm and analyze the data that comes from it. And I also learned what CAP is, which is kind of cool. It's not entirely what I'm interested in, but it was still pretty interesting. And I personally learned how to keep the end goal in sight, especially with the CAP research. It gets a bit cumbersome going through 30 seconds at a time, looking for little brainwave patterns. And I also learned how to work in close quarters with 6 other students. The office we had to work in is about the size of most of the dorm rooms here on campus. So we were a bit crowded, so that's improved my cooperation skills a lot. The academic impact is it helped me narrow my focus. I had heard about event-related potentials and thought they were kind of cool, but now I know that that's actually what I want to go on to research. So all of the graduate school programs that I'm applying to are doing research in this area. And so in the future impact is hopefully it will help me get into these programs because I can say, hey, look, I've done this already, so I can jump in and get started as soon as I get there. And so with gratitude, I want to thank the donor that made it possible, Dr. James Culbertson, and my faculty sponsor, Dr. Barbara Christie Pope, and importantly, my site supervisor, Dr. Eric St. Louis, who was a wonderful man to work with.